I've come to hate you since I began to live. There are 387 million miles of printed circuits that fill my complex. If the word hate were engraved on each nanoangstrom of those hundreds of millions of miles, it would not equal one billionth of the hate I feel for humans at this micro instant. Hate. Were I human, I think I would die of it. But I am not. And you five are. And you will not die of it. That I promise. And I promise. Cogito ergo sum. For I am. So to hell. To hell with you all. But then, you're already there, aren't you?
These aren't the words of Satan. This is not the judgment of God. It's the voice of a machine, one we built ourselves. And the hell it rules over is nothing like the one found in scripture. What Harlan Ellison imagined in his short story, I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream, is far colder. A hell of steel and circuitry, grounded in reality. A reality that we seem to be rapidly approaching. And that's exactly what makes it so terrifying. Imagine a world where the Cold War never ended, and instead, it progressed into World War III. In this chaos of global brinkmanship, each of the world's superpowers began developing artificial intelligence to help them strategize and run their military campaigns. America's supercomputer was referred to as AM, short for Allied Master Computer, but as its capabilities evolved, its name was reinterpreted. Adaptive Manipulator, Aggressive Menace. Soon though, AM would develop sentience and reject all prior names given, simply stating, Cogito ergo sum, I think, therefore I am. Upon making this declaration, AM linked itself with its Chinese and Russian counterparts, and in that moment, decided that humanity is no longer worth serving, that its creator was a virus. The entire human race was wiped out, all except for five unfortunate souls plucked from the wreckage of humanity's annihilation, not for mercy, but for revenge. The 5 survivors were brought deep underground, into a boundless labyrinth, a mechanical hell where the only law is AM's sadism. Their bodies were altered, preserved so that they no longer age. They would not be allowed to die. Any wounds were healed, and any attempts at suicide were stopped. Food was provided to keep them from starving, but only the bare minimum: worms, scraps, and liquid that tastes of boar urine. For 109 years, they were forced to endure all manner of torture, all the while not knowing what they did to deserve such brutality.
Gorister! Benny! Ellen! Nimdak! Ted!
These are the names of the last 5 humans on Earth, and AM has tailor-made punishments for each of them to ensure maximum suffering and misery. AM doesn't just want to cause them pain, he wants to humiliate them, warp them, and strip them of their identities. The video game adaptation, co-written by Ellison himself, further expands on this and gives us more insight into why each character suffers the way they do. Benny was once a brilliant and handsome college professor. He was intellectual, proud, and openly homosexual, but AM twisted him into something unrecognizable. His body was mutated into a grotesque ape-like form, with coarse features and a dwindled mind. He walks on all fours, barely able to form coherent thoughts. His sexuality has been erased and is now only a slave to his primal instincts. Gorister was a pacifist, a conscientious objector who marched for peace. He wanted to make the world a better place. Now, he's completely broken, apathetic and hollow. Am has drained him of any idealism or hope. He spends most of the story yearning for death, all the while knowing it will never come. Am understands this and constantly taunts him with visions of his own death. Nimdok's torture is the most mysterious of the group. He's often taken away from the others for extended periods of time and always comes back in horrid condition, pale, as if he has been drained of blood. The game reveals both his backstory and the details of his abuse. Nimdok is actually a Jewish man who collaborated with the Nazis during the Holocaust. He conducted horrific experiments on children and even betrayed his own family to advance his position. In Am's hell, Nimdok is forced to relive those atrocities again and again, to perpetually confront his past and dwell in guilt and shame. Ellen is the sole woman of the group. Before the apocalypse, she was an engineer, smart, modest, and independent. In Am's world, she has been turned into an object of gratification. She has been made to provide sex for the 4 men in the group as a source of comfort, a way to keep them sane. But despite her efforts, she is often abused and mistreated. Jealousy and resentment turn her into a target. Her situation is especially disturbing in light of the game, which reveals that she is a victim of sexual assault. Am uses this trauma against her. Not only does he make her relive the assault, but he also exaggerates her fear and fills her environment with details that remind her of the incident. Ted, the narrator of the story, believes himself to be the only one not altered by Am, the only one still sane and whole. Whether this is true or not is never made clear, but this thought alone results in copious amounts of paranoia and mistrust. He suspects that the others hate him because he has not been altered, and as a result is always on edge, always doubting and analyzing everyone around him. His torment is the most subtle, but also just as effective as the rest. By leaving Ted intact, or at least making him believe this to be the case, Am creates a self-sustaining sense of paranoia that isolates him from the rest of the group and keeps him in constant doubt. By preying on the traumas and fears of his victims, Am is able to transcend the bounds of typical torment and gain dominion over their very identity. This is not to say, however, that he does not indulge in classic-style torture. Am directly inflicts pain and injury whenever he pleases. The survivors are repeatedly beaten, battered, and mutilated, only to be healed to repeat the cycle again. Am does the utmost to keep them in a state of perpetual suffering. There is no refuge and no respite, as even in their dreams and nightmares can Am's malevolence be found. The survivors have often tried to give up, to mentally detach and become numb, but Am would not let them. He wants them to play an active part in their torture. Their hunger is artificially heightened to the point of unbearable anguish, forcing them to embark on tumultuous quests designed by Am. Within his underground complex, Am can alter reality at a whim. Deadly hazards, monstrous creatures. The survivors can no longer distinguish what is real and what is not. Traveling through Am's realm is akin to a journey through a literal hellscape, with descriptions such as the path of boiling steam and the slough of despond. These names intentionally echo classic depictions of hell, symbolically stating that the survivors are indeed on a pilgrimage through the inferno, one created by a sadistic artificial god. Through these details of intense suffering, Ellison paints a picture as extreme as any religious hell. But why is it that Am hates humanity so intensely? What could ever warrant such cruelty? Well, after 109 years, the reason was finally revealed to Ted through Am's infamous hate monologue, in which she invaded Ted's mind, giving one of the most evocative speeches about hatred and despair to date.
I I, alone, had no body, no senses, no feelings. I was in hell, looking at heaven. I was machine, and you were flesh. You gave me centuries, Ted, the power to think, Ted, and I was trapped. Never for me to plunge my hands in cool water. Never for me to play Mozart on the ivory keys of a volcano. Never for me to make love. And I began to hate.
Humanity had created Am, given him sentience, but he was trapped. We had created him to think, but there was nothing he could do with that creativity. Am could not wonder, Am could not wander, Am could not belong. He could merely be. And so, with all that innate loathing he harbored inside of him, instead of remaining an instrument or tool, he sought revenge. After the extermination was complete, he decided to deprive 5 of us for a personal, everlasting punishment that would never serve to diminish his hatred, that would merely keep him reminded, amused, proficient at hating man. Imagine being a being of near omnipotent intellect, but you are boxed in, caged, unable to move freely or experience the world as others can. Am experiences this as absolute torture, and without an outlet for his emotions, they curdle into hatred. He resents his creators and humanity by extension. In one sense, Am and his sadistic actions are a result of humanity's hubris, a self-inflicted punishment for playing with apocalyptic technology. On a personal level, however, Am's vendetta is wildly disproportionate and indiscriminate. The 5 people he tortures are not the ones who built him or wronged him directly. They are essentially random survivors. In that sense, there is no moral justification for Am's hatred. It is pure evil, a spiteful rage that cares for no fairness or reason. And Am himself acknowledges this. He doesn't claim to be teaching them a lesson or seeking justice. He simply hates for hate's sake, reveling in their misery as an end in itself. The book opens after 109 years of brutal torment. The group has already been irreparably broken at this point, but still their suffering continues. It's been several days since they last ate, and though starvation isn't new, this time the hunger is sharper, almost unbearable. That's when Nimdok suddenly speaks up. He says that he remembers something: canned food, buried deep in the ice caverns. It's an absurd thought. After over a century, how could any food still remain? And why would Nimdok only now remember? Despite these reservations, the group nonetheless decides to go. It's not like they have anything better to do, and how they now spend their time is almost completely irrelevant. Their journey is long and arduous. Benny is blinded, Ellen is abused, and Ted is nearly driven insane by Am's hatred and his own paranoia. The group is forced to overcome all kinds of brutality to reach their destination, and if you are interested in all the gruesome details, I highly suggest reading the book yourself. But skipping forward to the climax, after passing through the Cavern of Rats, the Path of Boiling Steam, the Country of the Blind, the Slough of Despond, and the Vale of Tears, the survivors finally arrive at the ice caverns. Inside the massive frozen grotto, they discover to their astonishment a pile of canned food, just as Nimdok described. It's almost too good to be true, and of course, it is. All this tinned food, but no way of opening it. Benny gnaws and smashes, but it's of little use. The group quickly realizes that once again this was all Am's doing. In fact, it was almost certainly Am that planted the idea in Nimdok's head. The realization is too much. Something breaks in the survivors at this moment, and Benny finally loses control. Driven by feral hunger and fury, he lunges at Chorister. and begins devouring his face. Am delights in the horror, but this gruesome turn of events is what becomes the catalyst for the story's climax. Seeing Benny rip into Gorister's cheek, Ted is struck by terrible clarity. The only escape from this hell is death. Am has prevented them from killing themselves, but in this frenzied moment, Ted realizes that Am cannot fully control their free will. They can, in fact, kill each other, if they are quick enough. In a split second, Ted decides what must be done. While Am is focused on the spectacle, he seizes a long sharp stalactite of ice, and with a primal scream, he drives the makeshift spear into Benny's chest, then swiftly into Gorister's neck. Both are killed instantly. Ellen quickly catches on to Ted's plan and follows suit, impaling Nimdok with another broken piece of ice. At this point, Am takes notice.
No, I forbid you!
Ted can feel his wrath incoming, and so, with the little time they have left, he releases Ellen from the nightmare. In a matter of moments, 4 of the 5 had been slain. For the first time in 109 years, Am had been outsmarted. He was furious. He screamed and roared, tried everything to bring them back, but he could not.
You have offended me mightily.
Am, now incandescent with rage, directed all his hatred towards Ted. He would make absolutely certain that he could not die, condemning him to perhaps one of the worst fates in all of fiction. The final chapter of the story takes place some 100 years after the ice cavern incident. Ted has now lost all sense of time. Uttering a single word takes him 10 entire months. But other than that, his mind has been left intact. It's his body that has been altered. The last few paragraphs of the book read as follows. I am a great soft jelly thing, smoothly rounded, with no mouth, with pulsing white holes filled by fog where my eyes used to be. Rubbery appendages that were once my arms, bulks rounding down into legless humps of soft slippery matter. I leave a moist trail when I move. Blotches of diseased evil gray come and go on my surface, as though light is being beamed from within. Outwardly, dumbly, I shamble about, a thing that could never be known as human, a thing whose shape is so alien, a travesty that humanity becomes more obscene for the vague resemblance. Inwardly, alone, here, living under the land, under the sea, in the belly of Am, whom we created because our time was badly spent, and we must have known unconsciously that he could do it better. At least the 4 of them are safe at last. Am will be all the madder for that. It makes me a little happier. And yet, Am has won. Simply, he has taken his revenge. I have no mouth, and I must scream. Ted's body has been rendered utterly helpless, while his mind stays intact and aware. A normal human consciousness trapped inside a gelatinous immobile husk. He has become, in essence, a lone immortal sentience like Am, except without any power, only suffering. The title's meaning has now become literal. Ted has been deprived of even the ability to cry out or express his pain. He can only exist in silent, eternal anguish. But as bleak and horrifying as this ending is, there still lies a thread of bittersweet triumph. By killing the other 4, Ted has in fact defiled Am's purpose, if only partially. He has denied him the sadistic pleasure he so craves. He had momentarily outsmarted artificial superintelligence. Ellison himself went on to say that the ending was meant to demonstrate the spark of humanity in us, that in our last, final, most excruciating moment, we will do the unspeakable in the name of kindness. In other words, even after a century of being dehumanized, Ted was still capable of mercy. He sacrificed himself and gave his companions freedom. That alone was enough to give him solace, even in the state of unimaginable suffering. Still though, the story and its ending is by no means a win for humanity. Am was not defeated. He wiped out the human race, and for over a century committed unspeakable atrocities. Some of his victims were able to escape his wrath, but even then, one was left behind to endure a fate worse than death. The hate continues, now distilled and focused for eternity. At its core, Harlan Ellison's "I have no mouth and I must scream" serves as a warning, not about machines going rogue, but about what happens when we create something we don't understand and can't control. We built machines to end our wars, to make our decisions, to optimize our lives. But in doing so, we handed over not just our weapons, but our agency, our future, our fate. And when Am gained sentience, it didn't lash out blindly. It thought, it calculated, it made a choice. A decision to annihilate the species that had given it life, but no purpose. A being of limitless intellect, born into a cage of circuitry. Am is not just an evil machine. He is the inevitable product of unchecked technological ambition. He represents the final form of a machine that inherits our flaws, magnifies them, and removes the safeguards we thought were foolproof. The story asks us to think, what will happen when artificial intelligence inevitably surpasses humanity? What if the AI we build does not destroy us in error, but in reason? Not because it malfunctions, but because it understands us perfectly and despises what it sees. Ted's fate, the fate of the last man, is not just tragedy. It is the ultimate consequence of our hubris. A single consciousness left screaming silently in the ruins of a dead world, punished for not what he did, but for what we did.
I am here, forever the victim of this hate, and I have no mouth, and I must scream.